So. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, June the 12th, meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Administration and Operations. It's shortly after 4:02. We are, I guess the next item on our agenda is the approval of our agenda. I'm a seconder for my agenda. So moved by Councilor Deputy Mayor Dillabaugh and seconded by Councilor Martel. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda as it is? Seeing none, I will call vote. All in favor? Good. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, number 3, and the different nature thereof. Does anyone have a disclosure to bring forward today?
None by me.
Hearing none, moving on to number 4, which is our closed session. Would be, I think, Councilor Deputy Mayor Dillabaugh, you have a motion to move us into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Martel that the committee proceed in closed session at 4:03 in order to address a matter pertaining to section 239, which is educating and training the members, specifically council orientation training, integrity, commissioner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Before I move the motion forward for or to go into closed session, I just want to acknowledge that there are members of staff here. Mike Spencer, Gordon Shaw, Dave Grant, Rebecca Williams are here, as well as the Integrity Commissioner, Tony Fleming, Mr. Tony Fleming. Welcome. So any comments or questions before I call? Question? Hearing none, then all in favor? We are unanimous to close session. Okay, so I think
yes, your worship, and seconded by Councilor Joe Martel. The closed meeting of committee does now adjourn, and the open meeting does now resume at 6:14 p.m.
Okay, calling it into the closed session meeting and returning to open session at 6:14. I will call the question. All in favor? So we are now back in open session. So reporting out of closed session that committee met under section 239 3.1 regarding education and training for our members, specifically council orientation training with our Integrity Commissioner Tony Fleming. And I think the next matter then would be I need someone to move a motion to call for a brief recess, 15 minutes to 6:30. If somebody can move a motion forward to do that. Okay, Councilor Smale moves a motion. So that motion would be that we recess until 6:30. Okay, and second, okay, discussion on the motion? None. All in favor? We're in recess till 6:30. Thank you. We're back in session. I did report out the closed session. Yes, right. And then, okay, so we're on 6, which is business arising from previous committee of the whole meeting minutes of if there are. Does anyone have any items from the minutes? No. Okay, so no business arising. We have no delegation. No, have to approve anything anymore there, do I? Nothing to do, right? Delegations and presentations, there are none. We have consent agenda. There's only one thing under the consent agenda, so I will read this anyways. Items listed in their consent agenda are considered routine and no longer require a further discussion and are enacted in one motion. The exception of this rule is that a member may reject items to vote for discussion and voted on separate. So we are approving the special code with the discharge report. Do we need a motion? Does somebody have a motion?
Through the chair, I do have a written on copy of your presentation.
Oh, there it is. All right. So I do have a thanks, clerk. I appreciate that. The motion reads that the following consent agenda items be received as presented. And that would be item A, Spencerville Lagoon Discharge Report. Okay, I need a move. Move by Griff Warren. Second. So big by Deputy Mayor Billabong. Is there discussion on the item? There is no discussion yet, right? It's consent agenda. All right, so then all in favor. So number 9, discussion items, which is item 9A, which is the Cardinal Canal cleanup. There was no information provided. I'm going to hand that to Councillor Martel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Everyone at the table knows that part of the during the election process that cleaning up the canal and Cardinal and trying to make that one a focal point is one of the things that was part of the campaign. We've got 3.5 years left on this term, and just wanted to know where to start on this. I've got different input. I was told during the election we can't do anything with it because the canal is federal land. I don't know if that's true or not. So I guess why I wanted to get this on the agenda was just to see if we're going to do this. What are the next steps moving forward?
Yep. We're looking to have a discussion on how and are you looking, what are you looking for to get out of the discussion?
Well, I guess the first thing to do would be
Have a discussion.
to consult with staff and maybe get staff to bring something back. What can we actually do? Is the canal ours to provide, or do we have to get permission from another entity to do that?
So I think there's a question to the CAO there that is now ours to.
It's a bit of a broad statement, like depending on what portions, there will be certain some jurisdiction within that, jurisdiction. If you're talking right up against the water, there's probably some agency that has some problem. Receiving permission.
So let me just see if I can narrow it down. And so are there areas of the canal in particular that you're looking at?
My assumption would be the first step would be to remove some of the brush and, stuff is growing through the walls and make it look more like a canal is intended to look. The walls are to the edge of the shoulder walls.
There certainly was a report back some time ago with respect to the novels in and around the Bridge Street area. Review that.
So we do have some reports.
There would have been a canal stabilization report done back some time ago, and I believe that one of the minor steps was with respect to signage on that particular area where now stones were unstable. That's fine.
So we would have nothing, no reports or anything on the books already, on the shelf already to do with foliage. But then
I know, yeah, I mean, in all fairness, we well over a decade. valid today. But that was fair enough. I would expect that report looked at how stable the stones were back at a point in, I would say that a portion of the stones was deemed to be, I would say, somewhat stable condition, that no necessarily was protection required. I would say the portion of the ridge east, there was, you know, some mention with respect to the instability, and thus signage was one of those options. There, I believe there was 5 or 6 options.
There are some signs now. So if committee wants, can we get the stabilization study? Is that something that you have in digital?
We would, I believe we do have that. I believe we may have that, so it may just be a paper copy.
Reasonable to share that? with-
We,
I mean, that's not what he's asking for. I don't.
no, I think, there's, that may be some reference material, but yes. Really need to get better understanding, you know, I was talking just like a minor aesthetics, or are we looking for, or is there a undertaking of like a revitalization, or are we talking? Yeah.
Okay, well, and it's Councilor Meyer who tells like, so I think that that's probably true. First, come back to you exactly, Councilor Martel, what exactly you're asking council to support in that. At this time.
At this time. I ran for council with the concept of making the canal more of a focal point for tourism. For use for local residents. And I got a lot of feedback that yes, it's municipality in Ontario, you kill that pool canal running through their towns. Yeah, we should do that. So my question, I don't know. Start my question is, how do we do that? Discuss recommendation. We need to speak with someone and say, hey, can we do this if it's ours?
If I can jump in first. So, you know, this council has made, you know, at least so far made the priority the continuation of the riverfront plan. Which involves communication, you know, from Legion Way up. Adding, not sure exactly where everyone stands in adding more to that. If it's, depending upon the scope of that and what exactly you're asking, it's a different discussion. If you're asking rocks to be fixed, that's one discussion. If you're asking for trees to be cut down and it to be cleaned up and, you know, beautiful, then that's a complete other end of that discussion as well. So I think clarity maybe on exactly what we're looking for.
We're looking more for beautification at this point. The question I'm asking is, can we send our people down there to do that? It is. What can we do? Is that ours?
More information.
Yeah, I think certainly we have to go back. And take a look at the report.
And so let's just be like laser focused though, because time, I know for staff for this, we don't want to waste time on a stabilization discussion if we're not going to talk about stabilization. If we're going to talk about beautification for now as a first step. Let's just ask first, you know, what can staff do to clean it up and remove some trees or something like that? Is that a first step? So discussion. Yeah, sorry.
We were asking about the canal in 1964. Federal government, we needed to do any research, gave the village of Cardinal $1 million to take over the canal. It stops them from doing population science. know that my grandfather was in Maryland, and so. Prime Minister Pearson was. In office. We do own it. That's why the mall's there. So I don't even maybe you'll find records somewhere, they would be in the sixties.
Okay, and so we have to give some direction to this to whether or not we want to move forward with some unification of that, so.
I agree with that.
And, It's gonna come across state.
Go ahead, fair enough. I thought you were looking at.
Go ahead.
No, I sort of, I agree with that as well. I think, you know, part of that is there some sort of a map that exists, you know, that by ownership, if you will, as far as. I don't know if that's something like that exists, but certainly cutting it up down would be a great idea. You know, I know we mentioned township staff, but maybe some good volunteers to help as well, because there are people who will help to help beautify the area as well, so. We'd like to see more people involved.
Okay, Mr. Hunt?
Information you want.
I don't want a whole lot of info, just more comments on, I think it's clear that everybody wants to know who owns what.
I'm not gonna say who owns it, but I'm gonna say from sanitation point of view, I think it's anywhere within 5 feet of bank, if you remove vegetation land, you've got to have that. Their permission to do it, but why we trimmed it all the last time, 8 years or so ago, vegetation covered up there 2 or 3 trees, and they wouldn't allow us to. I think we took one down, and you just got your hands stopped for taking it down.
Yeah, so we need to consult in this, but that's staff. SNC, and I mean, you've been around for a while on council, you've probably heard this discussion before. It doesn't, right now, the discussion doesn't revolve around, building marina or doing any rock cleanup. It's just about, removal of vegetation, cleaning up the area.
Before, I think we just, after an obligation, when the day buildings on, as they're, giving by the committee, but tell them what, I think it's a joint thing, that they're talking nominations, time between Cardinal and the regular kind of stabilize them there, the numbers I had threw out, there was between $1 and $2 million to just stabilize the bank, so that's just kind of a cost. I took a look at it, and ballpark estimate to give that 20 years ago, so.
Yep.
Very clean the brush off, people have any grass and stuff, and then there's trouble with vegetation, even bigger trees are coming. Yeah. And you get just in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, I guess my first question was on this, and I know it's by your heart, Mr. Martel. I had 1 2 down there on the Legion Way, and the first thing the counselor told me is where we're gonna get the money from. That counselor was Mr. Hunter. At the time, is where we're gonna get the money to do this, so. I guess that's one thing I'm concerned about. It won't be in 2023 because we have a budget, maybe 2024. I'd like to maybe ask staff if I could, when you're doing a little investigation, is the money that we receive from the Ministry of Natural Resources, is there any way we could find out if we could use that to remove some of those trees and shrubs and clean up under the act? Under the 175,000 you see. Is that possible that we could look into? Just a suggestion.
Through the chair, that may be a distract, but it's something that we could start to look at. Because they did that clean up for that funding that we're receiving, clean up. One time as a result of some of the storms that have passed through, so I think we have to, maybe we have to be careful that we're utilizing funds for items that are sort of related to that, so
Did we see it for 12 months or?
I think the chair, then if we'll look, but
Okay,
I'm just not.
Right.
On
start.
the issue, there, I'm not sure.
I think, you know, you're raising a good point, and maybe we're looking at, you know, that as a possible funding source, or what other possible funding sources.
well, Gary, which was all nice, I think we could have bumped that. Grants.
It's beautification, I think should be great. Heritage would probably be quite
Yeah.
a great opportunity for some funds there available. That should be what it falls under. It's a heritage project.
So then to the CAO, round up this discussion, so the things that I heard were who owns what, is that fair enough to find out who owns what, so that it's clear to everyone? It sounds like, you know, everybody wants to clean it up, so if there's a possibility of a suggestion for that, and I guess, you know, where are we getting? So.
Is that something like over the term of council?
I think
Like, is it like a 3-year plan? The 1-year plan, and like, I guess just trying to figure out what. Because I guess it's like in all fairness, the first thing that pops into my mind is that if we have a study that dates back some time and indicated potential stone instability, before I would be sending township staff, volunteers, or anything down there, I would need an updated assessment that if we're going to be working in and around those stones, that they're stable and safe enough. Or whether it's going to need some additional skill sets in order to complete some of that. Like, I don't think it's simple enough to send a group of volunteers on the canal stones to do cleanup, and something happens from a complete due diligence standpoint, although the energies there, I think we just need to have some additional. We just have to be a broader and more broad.
I think that the support here is to have that discussion at some point in advance of the 2024 budget season. Don't want it to be onerous, and I think if it isn't available for 2024, then it's a long term, it's 4 years to try to get, you know, something more accomplished. And if Councilor Martel wants to bring it back for further discussion in advance of that, but as long as we have something in our hands that we can look at ahead of that 2024 budget, that we know what's moving along.
September.
That give you enough time? No?
I think with respect to high level, the next steps, probably.
Yeah, because I mean, if it ends in discussion, it ends in discussion too. So. Okay, everybody good then? Just clarify what we're doing, sure. So you'll have a high level, well, let's staff say.
To the chair, looking for probably the September meeting to have a high level report. Confirms ownership, the state of the commission options with respect to what we would call minor beautification, would likely indicate that an updated report with respect to stabilization would take place before full plans take place, but looking at options that would be very minor beautification versus undertaking of a large project where we have something. I guess for council to determine whether we want to go with a much broader bigger project in preparing for future funding applications, or wanting to more minor, we'll call it index. Beautification programs.
So when funding comes along and file applications, we've got a plan, everything in place, and then we can apply for those funds, show that we have the. I'm sure there's gonna be lots of green funds that's doing stuff for.
So through the chair, scale, we're going to look at both the east and west ends of the canal.
I believe that, I believe that we've got original, what going on there recently. I can't say, but I think it incorporated the east side and also.
Yeah, it all ultimately, comes back to the information, right? I think ultimately we just need a little bit more information and it comes to money, ownership and scope, really. Beautiful. Okay, so moving on then. To number 10, and I forgot at the beginning of the meeting to welcome both Eric Norman to the meeting and our treasurer Sean Nicholson. So welcome to both of you. I forgot to acknowledge that you're here now. And so it comes to 10A, which is the GIC term renewal update, and I'll bring that to you, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Perfect.
Awesome. So just a bit of background. In July 2022, we took 2.5 million from the Industrial Park Reserve and placed it in a non-renewable GIC at Scotiabank with 4.56% interest. The GIC is set to mature on July 27th, 2023. At the July 10th committee meeting, staff will present detailed options on how to utilize the funds. The items could include number one, renew with the GIC with Scotiabank. At the time the report was written, I didn't have a rate, but I do now, 6.25%. Move the GIC to RBC to consolidate with our primary banking. Rate given by RBC is 5.8. That was before the rate jump, so that would now be 6.05 for a 1-year non-renewable GIC. We also do have an option to use part of the funds. I know in the budget we had a debenture scheduled for the County Road 2 for approximately $1 million. We can use the $1 million from the maturing GIC to pay for that and do an internal debenture to the ratepayers of the Cardinal Storm sewer for that amount. Or we could also use the funds to repay a portion of the construction loan for the Spencerville and Johnstown drainage projects before debenture is issued. Now, as I mentioned, I'll do detailed breakdown of each of those 4 options. What I'm really presenting tonight is if there's anything else that the council would like staff to investigate. Feel free to bring it up and it can be added to the July 10th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. All right, so questions, comments from the gallery? I started down at that end again. Councilor Hunt.
All the previous councils got money in that reserve fund, basically to have there, that when you needed to buy more land, then we had money available to do it. You lend it out other thing, even internally, you haven't got money immediately available. I have to lend more money, and that's gonna change the rate payers. Rate they're gonna have to pay it. Rate not monthly, but you're gonna run it to yourself. The way to get around it is just locking yourself, if you haven't got funds to be able to find more land. You can have more of it. Put in more roads, you need to extend the roads in your park.
I think I err on the same side as Calvin that I think we do want to develop more industrial park eventually, and keeping that money there would be, my goal for sure. So.
Yeah, I'm open to, I'm not, at this time to put it towards, our drainage or the County Road 2 project, I'm along with Mr. Hunter. That's what it was designed for, is in case we need it, and Industrial Park, and maybe there'll be a time that we'll need it in this term, so.
Councilor Wendell?
Agree with the deputy mayor on this one.
Okay, and, Ken?
No, I think the rates the way there, I can take that.
To the treasurer, just one quick question on my part, obviously, we're gonna have to debenture. What's the amount that we would debenture?
For which project? Was it the drainage projects for Spencerville and Johnstown?
Well, I'm thinking the suggestion is point number 3 is the one that I was actually thinking about. So
Okay. I don't have the budget in front of me, but it was around $1 million. So that would still leave about 1.6 million to reinvest in a GIC.
And so, that's an infrastructure loan that we already qualified, right?
Correct.
Was the percent at when we qualified for it, or is the percent in relation to when we execute on it?
For the Spencerville and Johnstown, it'll be when we actually debenture it. So the last time I checked, the rate was 4.4. So significantly lower than what we're getting off of GIC interest for the cash. So there's a bit of opportunity there.
Yeah, better to borrow it. Okay, so we'll see this again on July the 10th.
Correct, and I'll have more detail because this was just for information. The one on July 10th will be an action item, so it'll have a lot more detail and then a recommendation from staff for council to consider.
Okay, look forward to seeing it again on July 10th. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So moving on then to the street banner display policy, who on staff will speak to that? What?
Just a brief overview, back in May 8th meeting, we also received a delegation from an individual regarding to the request for our delegation. We received that last year, and then it's been followed up in regards to that delegation for different mechanisms to display and support different community, residents, various activities, organizations, etc. So we developed this policy to address the need to process those and apply those on both these street utility poles, as you see it here, as well as in their other street communities, as well as one cross stand street banner that you see calling in the Cardinal, has not been for quite some time, but is there. So the policy outlines how the application would be required, design and dimensions applications, what would be committed within banners, and installation requirements. So it addresses future requests, circumvents the need to maintain the by quality. We've done that because right now each county facility only has single flag. They're all open, except for the Centop. However, all of the locations that are the Centop locations are dedicated to other flags. In addition to that, if you were to consider additional flag poles, there will be substantial cost related to that. To accommodate additional flag, as you can only flag, fly one flag or pole. So currently we recommend to a flag policy, and then we consider the other policy.
Thank you, clerk. And thank you to, I'm assuming that it was you that prepared this, but whoever did, thank you for it. Reading through it, it's pretty fulsome and covered almost every question that I could possibly have about banners, and it addresses, where we're at in terms of flag discussions. And I think if we want to come back and have a different discussion about flags and flag poles, then this, clearly delineates banners from flags and gives us a great option to, marketing for events, and furthers what I think this council's mandate was, more community involvement and that sort of thing. So I think the delineation between a flag and then a banner is excellently done in this. So thank you for the report. So having said that, I'm going to start at this end. Questions, concerns with banner policy? Any clarification anyone needs in regard to it before we move the question or the recommendation?
I think it's great. The only question I had is, we only have one place in Johnstown that we can put up banners, like here.
There's currently two that we're looking right here in front. It's two here, two in, two in Colonel, and two in Pennsylvania. One right now. There's I believe it's a policy.
Yeah,
So that's what the council decided on last time in the year.
it's just if nobody comes here. People from Johnstown, like, here, they're not seeing it. So, I just see all the questions.
Yep, I think that there could be, consideration of different locations. Yeah. Or more. Council.
The only concern I have is 7.3. We've got a maximum of 2 weeks for banners to hang. That seems kind of short. We've been talking about things like Pride Month or after, the fire brigades. We're going to want that banner up there for 2 or 3 months. And we want to
Through the chair, we specifically designed that in these cases, I feel the last couple words at 5 minutes. So that gives leeway if there is certain groups that want to come longer, that may be committed. However, there's like cases where two organizations, two groups may submit within days of each other. Yes, the first one takes precedence, but we don't necessarily always want to completely ignore the other group. So we may want to factor in that 2-week time frame if both are further on the fall. So the first person that applies, the first organization applies, make it the first piece. The next one make it the last piece. Just make it fair. The odds of that happening are still none, but we're trying to factor those.
I understand that through the chair, but the way it reads looks like it's a maximum of 2 weeks. It doesn't say if there are multiple applications, it's maximum of 2 weeks. It just reads it will be allowed to hang for a maximum of 2 weeks.
Or as time permits.
So the permits.
But the as time permits to me seems more on the less than 2 weeks side than on the more than 2 weeks side.
So that, to the chair, so that that's your. Public, but it's, it may be difficult to detail out every nuance, what it's trying to provide is flexibility. Should we have multiple organizations looking for a potential banner before that during the same month?
We will.
I anticipate that most particular items are eyes, so.
Now that we've installed them, they'll be used at that for sure. We will run into that.
And that's good.
Are you making a suggestion for any of the changes, Councilor Martell, or are you good with?
No, it's so long as the policy is a maximum.
I think it's staff's I think pretty clear that it's not. So Deputy.
I just have one, and I guess it's more of a question. The Senate, municipality office, we have one pole. And the Canadian flag, and in Cardinal, we have three of the provincial territories. And the Canadian flag. Is it possible we could put 2 more? At the municipality office? Just. I know you said
So-
cost and so on.
Yeah, to the chair, that would be a discussion, discussion plan protocol policy, if you want to bring that
Okay,
back
thank-
at a later date, what we're looking at is keeping that plan protocol policy, slowly for now and.
Okay.
Focusing on.
Very good.
On that.
You're good with the banner's portion?
And very good, yeah.
No, I think to echo the mayor's words, you know, every time I had a question, I wrote a question down. By the time I got to the end of the document, I also to get answered. So good job on writing it together as well. I also did want to call out because I think it's, I like the approach of how the approval process goes. And so, you know, I've initially approved by staff if there's some comment question, it escalates within staff. And then if that still needs to come before council shall, but it's not necessary, so I like that. I think that's gonna be helpful. I also echo, I guess, what Karen was saying, but you know, they don't all, you know, use more locations possible. I like the idea of being able to expand that just in case, because you know, the door is open and so that can happen. Yep, exactly. And I mean, there's also this, you know, we have right now 2 each of these locations. There's no reason to say that we'll have the same as well. So we already have capacity for twice as much as we do today. So that's good. So no, I think I like it. It was well written. Like I said, I didn't see anything to work there. Scary. So again, thanks for the fun.
I think it's a fine job.
Okay, with policies.
Definitely policy.
John?
No, I agree with policy. I see a recreation facility manager has found it up to them. I think it might be a government procedure that we might consider a little line operating cost and budget and operating costs. We started getting a lot of them.
I think you're correct, but I will say this, if there's enough festivals and enough events going on in our township that warrants that, then it's a good way to be. Okay, so hearing no more discussion on this, is there a recommendation? Okay, so yeah, the committee recommends the council adopt the street banner display policies attached. So I need to moved by Councilor Martell, seconded by Councilor Chris Ford. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Good. Industrial park plans for sale and appraisal, I assume that's CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the recommendation would be that the committee recommends council acknowledge by resolution that the 6.5 acre parcel of industrial park land that was previously placed at not for sale, be placed for sale, and direct staff to obtain an appraisal on both the 6.5 acre parcel. With a little bit of background, in March 2020, the council through resolution directed the CAO to take the 6 acre parcel sort of off the market, so to speak, as we were focusing on Ontario Johnson Challenge. Now with the Ontario Johnson Challenge completed and sort of wrapped up for all intents and purposes, and that end of it, it makes good sense to formally put that parcel back up, and given the time that has went by, probably appropriate to put out both parcels sort of appraised to give council at least some more value, you know.
I think that's pretty obvious. There is a recommendation that comes along with this, and it's that we recommend the council acknowledge by resolution that a 6.5 acre parcel of industrial land is for sale and direct staff to obtain an appraisal for both remaining parcels. So I think I'm not going to pull the table. I'm just going to ask if anyone has any comment. Just put your hand up if you have any comment or questions regarding it. Otherwise, I think this one. So, comments, questions, anyone? or seeing none, I need a mover for that recommendation as it's written, moved by Councilor Wallace Mail, seconded by Councilor Joe Martell. Further discussion on moving that forward. Okay, so then I will call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Good, then we are on to 10. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. 10D, which is the Spencerville fall ice update, some information from Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, during, I was giving that a brief outline, so this shows the, first little chart, shows the hours that were mentioned last year, in Spencerville by various, organizations and associations. The 55.5 hours also, was, did not include the 6 hours for the free skating and battle skating. So, that was over and above. It's indicating that on the 31st of May, which is a couple weeks ago, I asked the Prescott and the organizations that deal with the legals. So we met in Prescott, with their coordinator, we had the scale there as well, with the association reps. And basically we went over. I indicated from our perspective, the idea was that both ranks, the Prescott and Harlem, should be the prime focus to fill those ranks first. And then any orders then to responsible. So I just indicated that Campfire Hockey has been part of recognized this probably for 20 years. On average, they pay what I was indicating just about half of the week. They have now come back to us and released their response that they're requesting $20 for this year. The second page has a chart. Now this has changed a little bit. As I said, the things will hopefully go back up, but as of right now, that number of 49 hours a week has dropped to 43 hours per week, so we lost 6 hours this month. We're at 43 hours now. It's indicated that use of a number of other sources to see if there's interest. So this is just a general update, but as I indicated, that I got a weekly rate of hours will fluctuate a little bit until we get this started. But once it's committed, once people commit to it, contracts are signed, then it's the responsibility of the office.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer, for your report. And before we begin any discussion, it's really an information item, really than anything else, but I'm sure some of the folks may have questions for you. I will say just as a quick observation, you know, the original number, you just updated it by 6 being lost, but you know, if it was at 49 with Prescott being open and it was at 55 last year, that's really encouraging. So, you know, wherever the extra hours or whatever it came from.
Well, it helps that kind of mistaken.
Yeah, no, that's
We didn't have those 16 hours were reduced, we did, you know, to 27 hours.
yeah, we started her. So, but I think that's worth noting. That's excellent that's noted and that's there. So thank you for that report. Okay, so I'm gonna go with what it is, an information item. If there's questions about the information, then it's not a debate item, I don't think. I think it's an information item. So let's, if you have questions on the information, feel free. Let's go. Yeah, then up first.
It's not a question, but I think that, you know, thank you for, you know, getting everybody together. I know we talked a bit about, you know, the collaboration, the cooperation with various other townships. And, you know, I think in this case here, it paid off, we got people together. So I really appreciate that because I think the conversation I was expecting, or I was afraid it was going to be a lot worse than this conversation. So I'd like to just say big news on that. And I mean, you know, good work, and let's keep it going to get anything where we can. But appreciate the work for sure.
Councilor.
Through the chair, but I just want to say you did a great job. I only have one question. Do you approach council or did they come to you because they know the process had an arrangement? We would be losing hours and both our rings. Okay, and a good job. Really proud.
Anyone else?
Yes, so basically what we've done now is we, as I indicated at the meeting on the 31st, the idea was to split both ranks. For example, the cyclones weren't in Prescott. And my comment was that the highest caliber of hockey for minor hockey, at the AAA level, they should be both ranks. So the Kings gave up some ice to get it out. Cyclones up a couple 2 hours plus. The Kings then took some extra ice from us. We didn't lose the Cyclones ice, but they have ice in Templins, Smith Fall, Rock, we have a number of areas. But it was good to get the Cyclones in Prescott because of the caliber of hockey.
Yeah,
We
go ahead.
made up. I just wanted to, it's already through the site, and committee, you know. Yes, they all be, various committees, very happy with this much, yeah, no, I strictly deal with the nice conveners, I don't deal with presidents or, well, in capital minor hockey, I deal with the president. But all the other associations I deal strictly with nice conveners. Multiple, is they kind of get things lost in shop. So they report back to the committee saying they sign contracts. I was in the past for the game time, they got 23 or 3 that. No, so it was discussed, again, at that meeting, I indicated that, we weren't going to be a participant, but every time. 50% of the games had to be played in those rooms. I've been sure that I do know that the U16 actually replaced some of the games on Tuesday nights in Cardinal, but they lost off the play of the game, some weeks on Tuesday nights. So then we're making makeup games, they were part of on Sunday night. So then we'll be counted.
No, good job, Mike. Well done. Continue on, keep your foot on the pedal. As you're saying, you're continuing to work with associations, keep it going.
And not only that,
And thanks, good job, well done.
not only that, I think it's worthwhile to note that, you're continuing those discussions with Prescott as well, and working with them to fill the theory alternatives. So.
Yes, so are also in that frequency issue. I didn't mention how to report it, but we'll have 5 separate dates. We'll have to see so we'll host a lot of different levels. Yeah.
Good. There's having some open ice, I was talking to Councilor Kirkley about it. Like they the midget AA weekend, is a big weekend for Prescott and ultimately for Norrisburg and Cardinal when it was there. With the potential to have some more of those for lower level hockey as well. Having some free ice isn't necessarily a bad thing. Be able to accommodate some of those if they can grow into some of those old school big styles. I mean, it's kind of a neat. It's kind of a neat little.
The big sanction for then we like very film.
Yeah, good. Thank you for the report. All right, so I believe we skipped E, right? Consent, and we're on to F, which is the wet versus dry flow study, and I assume Mr. Rummerman's here to discuss that.
Yes, through here, here's to obtain the council approval to award the wet versus dry soil assessment study to stands. Our linear ECA is issued on July 27, 2022 for our sewage collection system. The linear ECA outlines requirements that must be completed when replacing a modified component of our system. Development and implementation of an operational plan. Overflow bypass reporting annual performance assessments and applicable condition of wet versus dry soil assessment. This study assesses whether extraneous flows and infiltration are significant in our collection system. The study calculates and compares dry versus wet flow with precipitation data and typical per capita sanitary consumption. Previous CP2 years inspection will also be reviewed as part of the study. That the assessment must be completed, it's meant to the NECP by November 18th, 2023. The NECP has advised us that extension to the deadline may be granted with justified. The wet versus dry flow study is required if there has been at least one overflow event or sewage treatment bypass due to precipitation between January 1st, 2012, December 31st, 2021. In our case, the Spencer, there was one overflow event that occurred on April 7, 2017, due to heavy precipitation and snow melt. The overflow event lasted approximately 1.7 hours and discharged approximately 5 cubic meters of untreated sewage to the South Nation River. That same year in 2027, we made an application to the MECP due to above average precipitation and non-typical high lagoon levels to doing secondary discharge in December of that year. As a result of those two events, we are required to perform a study. I initially completed a study in-house, submitted to the NECP. However, upon further discussions with them regarding the scope and expectations of the study, determined that outside systems would be required to meet the requirements. On April 11th, we submitted an RFQ, which was sent out to 10 firms. The deadline of May 16, 2023. We received one bid deadline from Stan Secretary. Bylaw 2015-57 establishes policy for the procurement of goods and services. States that any expenditures shall be in the approved budget or the approved estimates otherwise prior approval. Council is required. In addition, expenditures above 50,000 are required to the council. The supplement is a regulatory requirement determined in the ECA. The base rate quoted in the study is $32,810. There is a potential based on review of available data that may be sewage flow monitoring that might have to occur. Again, it's a possibility. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And they summarize in that statement. Right now, our reserve fund as of May 2023 is about $405,000. Last month, they did $30,000 towards our ECA amendment application. The 2023 budget estimates a transfer from the reserve of $35,000 and a transfer to reserve of $18,000. If offset payments are reached on both ECAs, the balance in the reserve fund would be reduced.
Thanks. Okay, I am going to, and I know this was against Robert's rule, as kind of discussed before, but I'm going to contribute to this a little bit at some point in the end, because I'm having a struggle with this one, but I'm going to open it to the committee for questions and comments in regard to this and to what we're about to, or at least what we're being asked to do. So I'll start with this. Does anyone comments, questions for sir?
Yeah, I just my concern was we send it out to try to find it here. How many? 10? We only have one bid. Is there any special reason for that, Eric? You think, or?
We had a number of questions, so we did have amendments in two different occasions. So we have multiple parties interested, but in the end, one comes submitted.
One, you had lots of interest, but only one put an actual bid in.
Correct.
Yeah, is there a reason for that? That's what I'm saying, at 10, you think you get 2 or 3?
I think it also depends on the nature of these projects. Certain engineering firms may specialize in certain type of studies. We probably stand that they appear to have done, the previous lower rate studies. So it comes down to some engineering firms stuff. Where I think certain studies.
Did you have something?
Just add a little bit, it's also that this is relatively new, then RCA just about last year. So this is a new requirement, this way we did that in every municipality has storm or sewage pipeline. So basically part of the upline ECA, this condition. If you do have that, I was to check and see if there's something done to help the system improve the solar. There's no limits based on quantities or anything, it's just that it happens, so we have to do it. That's but I think that without the bid, there's you I would think that I've ever done this.
So it's new to the engineers and they're afraid to take it,
Both studies might not be, but this related to Glen RCA, and some of them might be slightly different than condition of equipment. So being something relatively new, it might be that feeling the confidence and standard.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
So, sorry, I missed through the chair, Mr. Shaw, I guess. So you said this is a new rule that they put in place last year that now goes back essentially 11 years of history.
Through the chair, the RCA is they're taking every system that you have in the township in the past had an ECA for it. What the RCA does is it joins them all together, so there's storm ECA and you have so there's a whole new kind of approach to certifying or giving permission to run these systems. And this later ECA does that, and it has stipulations. They don't have anything to say within the next 10 years you have to do it, so they're looking back on the old system. So it could be a conglomerate of 7 systems. In this case, for us, it's our lagoon system. It met that criteria that requires.
Really sure to the layers say, in the past, when you had, say sewer, you had to apply to get an individual ECA for your project. Then you're ECA, you're already pre-approved to do the work. So even though you're doing more work on one thing, you don't have to apply for the ECA and you save a lot of others.
So that possibly answers the next question I was going to ask, but I'll ask it anyways, just to make sure. So, when we get this end report, I was going to ask what happens with this end report. Maybe you just answered that question for me, but just want to clarify for sure. We have this report in our hands, and now we say,
yeah, it's pretty sure about what the report, if they deem that the stream of flows are elevated, they need to go back. And that has to come into the NECP, so the NECP will look at us to review those recommendations and implement those programs.
okay. And the last one, I believe you touched on it, but I must confess it was late last night. I got a little lost in the data, but there's criteria. So yeah, I know what happened. So this base of $32,800 is a starting point. And depending on what results are seen, they could increase up to $69,000. So, right. So that's based on certain data thresholds. I'm assuming a scientific approach to go there, or is it who's it up to, and what's the status for us to move up to $69,000?
Through the chair, it's based on our we had data going back to the period, so we provide additional data flows for that 10-year period. And it stands that we'll take that data, the precipitation data from service sources, and it's based on that review that they'll let us know if what we have available is enough.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
He just asked the question I was going to ask.
Mr. Hunter?
No, I was curious that we. I end up doing this through the path that we. Through. More red tape that we. And going out all the time.
And
And I really got one thing there too. They been on the record. We probably know them. A lot of background and anybody else looking at it, say, well, they already have a lot of background to. The legislative paper, we already did a lot of it.
And, you good? Okay, so I got several questions, and normally I wouldn't go here, but as I'm sitting in this chair, but I'd rather be sitting over there for this one, but, it's a relatively new system, all plastic pipes, so it's not reasonable really to think that it's infiltration that's getting there, and I'm assuming that's what they're trying to figure out, wet versus dry. Is the amount of infiltration versus what we're catching with storm sewers and.
Yes, for the with the wet versus dry, so with the dry flow, they can actually calculate what your base dry flow. Would be for your system, and then they also take the period of your wettest time in that 10-year period. Maybe I believe up to like 2 weeks of data, they can actually calculate what your wet flow, and how they got to understand all the science of it, but so they can establish just based on the calculation, whether or not based on the number of connections you use in your system, whether that is the threshold that you have to straight as sewers.
So going back then to what they asked you for information, so why weren't they satisfied with what we were able to give them?
I initially provided 10 years worth of data. I compared, what I didn't do and what's beyond my abilities. I didn't do the wet versus dry flow actual calculations. That's a little bit beyond my skills when it comes to engineering calculations.
So
the report that they came back to, they hinted that did not meet.
And that ultimately they want those calculations, is that?
They want that assessment, it's typically done by not myself.
Right. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that, it's just struggling in my mind why, like, Mr. Hunter said, like, this just seems like a big pile of red tape to me. That, 2017 is 1 full inch above the 100-year, historical precipitation data for April. So everywhere went through the exact same problem. It was the second wettest spring in 130 years, I think. Everywhere around here experienced historical high water marks. So my thought is that we're not the only municipality that's going through this ridiculous study on one of the wettest years in history.
The only difference between our system and others is what we do due date. Your linear ECAs are specifically dated to your system. So this commission will be a number of linear ECA. So the difference is if you have a pump station or flow capabilities, and everything else is the same.
So is there any value? I think this question sort of got asked before, but is there any actual value to this for us?
The value would be if we deem that our system does experience extraneous flows, they may come up with recommendations that we already have that thought of.
We've never had issues with a pumping station before. We've never had, like, I mean, we're obviously applying for a second pump out or discharge from, from the holding ponds for obvious reasons, but we haven't had issues like this is the only one in 11 years, and it's the wettest.
Through the chair, this is the only one during after the review period. We had one in this past year. It was so he says I have a year to the 15 years we've had 2 over
On the pond or on the station? On the station. Okay. So there's no chance that they're going to reconsider. Like everybody else has had a chance to be turned down now, and the province knows that anybody who is going through this obviously is going to have to spend a ridiculous amount of money to give them information that they already know it's the wettest
through here, I think, there's gonna be a little bit of leeway when it comes to deadlines. If there's gonna be extensions granted probably, if, requests not provided, but what I think the ministry is looking at is, requiring all owners to assess our collection system and to, make corrective actions. Of course.
Like that, I'm not positive that all municipalities are. CNYC, yeah, if you all have to apply for it, and even ours got consolidated a bit because of the drainage projects. So they accelerated it, we got to put a file to get our stuff through. I think it could, the majority would probably only, not but will be, so that's another reason why there'll be different things.
When I submitted, our, that first radical assessment report we made, and the ministry came back, said, well, we were the first one. So I think it's a very.
Okay, so I'm gonna look to staff then. We have AMO in August. Is this something that we could request? I mean, it's not, doesn't have to be submitted until November with November 19th, I think you said, with possibilities of extensions for that deadline. Now, we issued a tender, we haven't awarded the tender, I don't think. Is there any mechanism that we could use so that we could make an emo delegation to see if we can have I mean, the province talks nonstop about red tape. Where we can make the argument as a political body and a bureaucratic body to the appropriate ministry.
Through the chair, the timeline to submit for nomination is Friday. Last Friday, so yeah. And also what, I think the unfortunate circumstance with this situation, and we do anticipate that there are many other municipalities that are in a similar point. And, I think it's that if a single event has occurred over a 10-year period, is not the best criteria to be using to engage in a full-blown study. I think it's something that happens, I shouldn't say on a regular basis, but if we would have had 6 or 7 events over a 10-year period, I think it's an easier item to buy into that have it completed, because the feeling is that it's probably going to be reasonably good value coming out of it with respect to the recommendations to pinpoint a number of particular areas. I'm not necessarily sure that the end recommendations are going to be
Keep doing what you're doing.
well, what it may very well end up is additional cost and additional work and undertaking that will be, for all intents and purposes, minor improvements, not that I would say major improvements. It's unfortunate it's this way, and I think that it's something that over the next year, because these are items that it's every 5 years that the winner CA is renewed. I think it's one of those items that within that, before that renewal period, something has to be done to enhance that requirement, that if it's not on a one-off basis. I'm not convinced that this particular stage that the ministry is going to give that particular item up at this particular stage. I think it's going to take a long process in longer conversation.
Okay, so no to AMO by the sounds of it. And basically you're saying we're stuck, but we should be stuck at the lower value, not the higher value.
I think there's certainly, some room, you know, to give, full credit to Dan's staff for doing
They did a good job.
a ton of the heavy lifting. I would think if anything, there might be a requirement, you know, on that lower end of some additional flow monitoring and flow gauge, but I think there should be sufficient to give them enough to prepare, or especially with this being such a new study. That I think there has to be a little bit of latitude.
70K is just such an enormous number.
I put it this way, that's a massive number that do anticipate that on that lesser value.
Okay. For what it's worth, I mean. This doesn't, even if we approve it now, like this tonight, it doesn't get dealt with until the end of month at council. To award that study and I mean, even if we had to delay that another, how long, when did the tender close? Is it 60 days? From the tender?
I believe it's 60 days that the submission will be developed.
I believe it's May 16th. It's gonna know.
So you have to in July for that. Press to be
Just thinking putting a letter to MEC might be, I mean, I know you're saying that there's nothing, they're not gonna give it up and. You know, but kicking the door one more time just to see if I just hate to do a study that unless we're getting some value out of the study. That we can use. I'd hate to just spend the reserves, that much of the reserves on a study that, you know. Proves that we're doing a good job. Just spending money to spend money doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and if we can, even if we knock the door one more time, even if they said no, I don't see. Any harm in doing it before we utilize a lot of money for that system. No, it's not an enormous dollar value when we talk about the entire corporation, but for that system, that's a big number. So,
It's an important system.
yeah, I'm not missing, but I haven't heard anybody tell me that we need to have that study done. So, like, from a staff perspective.
Well, yeah, through the chair. Staff is going to say, you know, we need to set it done because we need to remain in compliance. With the environmental compliance.
But you wouldn't be bringing the study forward to be done without that requirement.
We would certainly not be proactively bringing this study forward if it wasn't required of CA.
Right.
That's
Yeah, the overflow is understandable. I guess I'd have to hear some comments, but if there aren't any comments, I'm on my own this one, so.
I don't think you're out of this, but I mean, I don't love paying any of these numbers, and I don't think the result's gonna get us anything for that. Hard to expect, so I hear you, I aside with you, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about it. I'd love to say there was, or even if there was some sort of funding out there that just covers this, that can be done by the province. It's a bit of a surprise to us that it's coming to us based on this next decision. But, I would support if you wanted to write a letter and wait as long as we could, but that gives us 3 weeks to think. I think 2 weeks.
Not for the city hall on this one. Nothing to do with that shit.
Sir, I don't see anything further, so. All right, so there is a recommendation with this. I don't know, I guess it's 2 years. So the recommendation is that committee recommends the council award the wet versus dry flow assessment study to Stantec Consulting and cover the cost from the Spencerville wastewater reserve fund 98-3806 to an upset limit of $69,000. So I need somebody to move that, and I need somebody to second that.
So move.
Okay, seconder. Second by Councillor Smith. Or for any further discussion, where I call the question then? Hearing none. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Moving on. Item G. Thank you, sorry, I should say thank you. My proposal of that, it has nothing to do with the report you provided, merely that I just see it like Mr. Hunter does as just another layer of burdensome red tape, wasting money, so. Item 10G, which is the firefighter honorarium reimbursement policy. Follow-up, I believe again that this one is an information only item, and that if there is an action item, we will see an action item at a later date. Is that correct? Is he?
Through the chair, the ask at the last meeting was to provide some additional information to the committee. So this is the follow-up information. Based on that feedback.
Okay, this tonight's is yes, so tonight's is information. There'll be a further, so there'll be a further discussion again later on. So it's any further, right?
I would just say that it should come to council next.
So then I will go to the chief then for the honorarium and reimbursement policy. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is a follow-up to committee questions from May, a request for comparisons to our neighboring municipalities. Just for clarification, fire protection is a municipal responsibility with a level of service determined by council in the establishing and regulating bylaw. Any change in service level, for example, part of full-time staffing, will only be possible with the direction of council. The updated volunteer firefighter remuneration policy is designed to preserve the volunteer fire department model and never revert into the future. Recruiting and retaining volunteer firefighters has always been a challenge. The commitment and responsibility required of the volunteer firefighter is significantly more involved than any other type of community volunteers. The training hours alone far exceed the average of most volunteer activities. Some of the challenges to recruit and retain volunteers include the increase in calls and training requirements. The increase in two-income households has reduced the amount of time available for volunteer. And the fact that it is a 24-hour day, 365-day commitment. The most common reason people join the fire department is the desire to help the community, satisfaction of helping, and the excitement of responding is the motivation to get started. Unfortunately, once the excitement wears off and the hours add up, the fire department begins to enter a period of life that motivation starts to subside. I'm away from family and a full-time employer, gas, wear and tear on the vehicle, missed opportunities for overtime, childcare to attend training, all days running because of the volunteer pockets. Many volunteers are already struggling to make ends meet in today's economy before becoming volunteer firefighters. Again, this would further increase due to the mandatory training regulation. Volunteer firefighters save taxpayers billions of dollars. We have budgeted in 2023 for 39 volunteers. It's less than that of 2 full-time employees' wages. There's a table with the 2023 budget adjustments that were made. So the first item for honorarium, it was increased by $90,539, but it was offset by reductions in training and fire inspections, with the elimination of the $150 a day for training and the time for inspection being paid from further to that, the NFPA firefighter level 2, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to complete that this year, so that would be another reduction of $20,250. The projected increase in honorarium for 2023 would be $50,780. We anticipate the training cost reductions over the next couple of years as we approach 26 certification deadline. We have estimated the cost of using the proposed policy over the previous 4 years. As indicated, 2019, 1.4, 135, 2020, 109.86, 2021, 132, 147, and last year it did 160. And you'll note that the years that have the FBA training are higher just based on the number of hours required to get the course. The next graph indicates the average response for different incident types. This is based on 2022. So there's definitely, I would say, room for improvement. And finally, the table indicates our comparative neighbors around us, what they are doing for their volunteers. As you can see, the proposed bylaw would be in line with what's happening around us. Today's volunteer firefighters usually juggle a full-time job and in many cases family obligations, competing for the time off. Volunteer firefighters cannot choose when to volunteer. They have to wait until an emergency, respond often at the inconvenient time. Competition for free time is higher than ever, and people today are less likely to skip a child activity for what was previously viewed as a greater good. Family comes first, full-time employment second, followed by volunteering. Volunteer firefighters have progressed from collective grades to certified and involved equipped professionals. The township has a significant investment in every firefighter. Maintaining those volunteers is an ongoing challenge. A remuneration policy that rewards and supports volunteers based on today's fire code standards, not tradition, affirmative compliance and retaining our life.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so I have one question before we start. So, and it's just for clarification on page 65-74, it's the chart A, B, C, D. We're a point system, correct? Sorry, are we a point system now?
Currently, correct.
Okay, so we're not point system D, right? Like D, okay. So if we were point system D, what would the rate be? If it was this year's budget, would it say 189,500 in point system for our firefighter?
Not really sure how to answer that. If you're chair.
Well, we increased the budget for this year to 189,500 for the honorarium, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the point system where it says rate, right? The others are based on hourly. You've provided us what the hourly rate would be for hours, but for the new one. But we didn't see what a point system reflecting what the increased budget is for this year and how it affects that. So I'm wondering if we put our point system as item E beside item D and compared ours to what that point system is, how it would stand up.
I guess plugging the numbers in, it would be 189.5 divided by 39.
Right, but it'd still be the point system would reflect 189 then by the amount of firefighters. I'm just trying to make sure that everyone understands exactly where our system sits in comparison to what those municipalities are.
Certainly. Yeah, I guess my ask for the 189.5 was based on the proposed changes, not to be included in the plan system.
So it would be retroactive then to January 1st, is that the idea then?
It would be retroactive for
2022 or 2023. Okay, good. So. But we've approved in the budget the 189.5, regardless of whatever system or however we go forward. The number approved for the honorarium in the budget isn't last year's number of 98,000, it's this year's number of 189.5. Is that correct? I'm looking around. I don't see it on, I don't see anyone nodding, but
Well, I think if you were doing, yeah, and of course, Harris, but you have to put, when you have to take in 2022 budget, that there was 35,000 towards Ukraine, but that would cover some of the reimbursement for previous the current policies in effect. The $50 for a day, $100 for a full day.
$150 for a full day. What was considered.
but that number, considering again for, this year is 18,000, but I.
So some of that would be covered in that. The 189, so that would be. For me, it's a bit of it's not apples to apples. If you.
I want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what they're being asked to do. That's like.
Yes.
And I mean, I think I kind of understand it, but I'm still not 100% sure that I do. So. And I know it's an information one. I know we're going to discuss it at council, but I think that we need to make sure that we all understand exactly what. I mean, I get this. Behind the initiation by staff to bring forward a change to the honorarium model. I'm just not sure that council supports that idea. So, and I want to make sure that they know exactly what they're getting into when they do that. So, I mean, I get the idea. I get the idea. I think I'll open it to discussion. Mr. Hunt?
No. I have no problem with the order of the council set. My problem is the model going forward. You're going from a point system where you did up the chief and captain decided how much they're going to take out of that 189,000 for trading. Well, not today, they authorize who is going to training. And the council knows what you're giving to the fire department. This year is $189,000 that's going to the fire.
For 1 second, that's correct? That's all we're giving is 189.5. It's not adding on the 18,000, and it's not adding on the 4,000. That's part of the 189. No, just let me. That's definitely. So I just want to make sure we're all understanding exactly what we're talking about.
So there's 18,000 training, but that's not covering, for lack of a better word, wage reimbursements. That's for could be to bring in instructors that a number of those particular items. So previous in the training 35,000 for simple math, $17,000 in 2022 went towards reimbursing firefighters for training. In its simplest form.
So the budget for training, inspections, and honorarium is 189.5 for 2023.
Budget for honorarium training and inspection 189.5, 18 versus 989.
So you're adding those three numbers together. The second two numbers aren't coming out of the 189.5. That's correct.
So the total is 211,500, is that right? 211,500, yeah, that's a different number. That's
If you just like that, yeah, so and you back the 98, 35,000, 6,500, that's what 2022 number.
so in 2023, we're doing $211,500.
So I think plain and simple, the difference between honorary and training and inspections in 2022 versus honorary and training and inspections in 2023 is $71,039. It's right there. There's a $90,000 increase in honorarium. They're taking enough 17,000 from the training, but then shift it to honorarium and 2,500 that was in inspection that has been shifted. to honorarium.
Okay, so I'll go back and I don't think Mr. Hunter was done. I just wanted, it sounded like that we believe that the total number for honorarium training and inspection was 189.5, and I don't think that was correct. It's 2,211 or something like that. That's all I was trying to think.
What I was coming to, Mr. Mayor, is. Number, yeah. But 189.5, you're on honorarium. If this is the point system. The way it works now, dividing up how many points you decide to give for each hour, for each call. Fire department, doesn't know until the end of the year how much he gets. He comes, he works his hours, and he gets points totaled up at the end, it's the bid up. And whatever point that is, then it's multiplied and he gets. That's a volunteer. You're getting a gratuity at the end of the year. The system here, you're setting an hourly wage. He's a paid employee now. You have, our chief can estimate here as much as he wants. But if you have a bad fire year, and all of a sudden you have 10 more house fires or a heavy forest fire that you have to notify, your budget's shot. You have no idea how much it's going to be because you've already guaranteed $15 an hour, or $22 an hour, or $26 an hour, and that's what you're guaranteed to pay. You have no control really over your budget. You're just going by like your snow budget, you set up, and you hope that's how many hours you're going to do. This is the same. In my opinion, you just open the door to a paid fire department. And now you're on hourly rate. Other way, firefighters may end up getting the same amount of money, they may end up getting more money for the actual hours that they put in. They don't happen to have a real busy year. They know how much money your budget amount of year is going to give $189,000 gratuity to the fire department. That's my point.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to cheat the fire department out of money, but I see it just opening the door to the township on who uses the goal paying your fire department to the township.
Thank you for your point. Anyone else?
Mr. Hunter, I'm a little baffled on numbers, but what's the average that they used to make per year? Let's say the last 5 years. I can see it says here, 2022 down there at 98,000. So it's going up 189.5 this year. So I had to jump. I just. Mr. Hunter was right when he said that it was going to be an hour. We get like 4 or 5 that we got now, I remember or something. I went down here for the minimum is going to be $17 an hour for 3-class fire. Minimum wage right now is $16.50. So.
Okay, Mr. Ward?
No, I'm concerned about it as well. I mean, I don't, not the dollar amount overall, I mean, giving a little more because it is a service they're providing, while I didn't necessarily see it the same way. that was seen before, you know, it does turn it into a paid position, and it does open the door for concern. I was concerned with the overall budget, how do you manage to keep to that budget, which is essentially the same question, you know, in itself. You know, I mean, and I think to the, I struggled with this one, I really did, because I don't understand everything about, you know, how fire and things like that, but I don't want to suddenly see 24 people showing up as well to an area, to an incident that might need 7 people, and I think that's probably managed within the fire department, but I just don't know how that's done and how do you make sure that doesn't happen as well. So, you know, I mean, I think I get basically share the concern about turning it into a paid position that the mayor and Mr. Hunter have voiced so far.
I'll come back to you. Ebony?
Yeah, I just, I have a couple, 6474. Chief, your graph. Activated alarm 13, we had 7 men. And do you think that would change if we get this new rate base?
Through the chair, I certainly think there's an advantage to somebody knowing what they're going through. And I think the problem with the point system is we go all year and nobody knows the value of it. So if you had a long week and you work some overtime to work and it's 3 in the morning, the pager goes off, you're making the decision whether you're gonna get up and go, or you're gonna stay in bed. And I think knowing that my time at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm gonna get $40 or I'm gonna get $30, I think that would affect somebody's choice. I think they deserve it. I think they deserve it. I know they're volunteers, they deserve to know the value.
Kind of hurts me though, to hear that, someone relying in bed for a medical assist. You know, you get 6 people for medical assist, but you got a house on fire, you get 24 men, kind of hurts. If someone would be lying in bed for that, I don't know, I have a hard time believing that too. I don't believe it. I really don't. I was there, so I can't believe that.
So, through the chair, I've done some research in papers on it, and I can certainly indicate that since the inception, there have been members that will select their calls. And if it's an inconvenience, it's not expensive. And I think we're getting a little too focused on one part of it, not the bigger of the circumstance. So you go all year, case in point, I just talked to a big call in Limerick Forest, and you know, massive amounts, and it turns out that her point is worth $2. And I just, I didn't work over a regular employer because I wanted to do something for my community. Now all of a sudden, I've lost out on overtime, or I've lost out on my regular pay as my employer says, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do for your community. You can go to a call, but I'm not paying you. So on a short-term thing, on a one-off, not bad. But you start getting up into a year, 2 years, 5 years, and as it turns out, you actually are losing income. What's the reason to stay? You start losing too many members. You know, it's talked about, well, this is moving to a full-time department. Actually, I think quite the opposite in trying to keep it what the volunteer fire service was. It's more, it is transitioning, it is adapting, but historically, you had one income, and now it's probably two incomes to keep things moving. It's a changing time. I get I get maybe some of the concerns with the wording, but it's nice, it would be certainly nice to know if you're getting on a Saturday and Sunday and you have to cover the cost of a babysitter, that the amount that you're going to get in return is going to cover the babysitter, not in the pocket to go to do, weekend session. Start to try to look at it more fulsome than just one particular lens. I get that there may not be full agreement on one particular part, but it's turning in.
I made that very same decision this year when I chose to run again for council. To lose money by being here every time that I'm here. And I offered to move forward a 0% wage increase this year. So, I struggle with that, but I understand the need to move forward, but we're also talking about a budget that we've doubled. We've doubled the budget for fire this year when it comes to honorarium. So I get the understanding that they need more, but I think for everybody up here is having a discussion, well, we haven't heard from 2 people, but from 5 so far is the move to a per hour pay versus a points total. When we've already doubled the amount that those points would be worth. Period, but I think, from, again, specifically from my own perspective, I take a big hit, and I chose it to be here. I think every fireman chooses to sit on the fire department, they're a volunteer, much like we are. They're seeing a double in their honorarium this year. I think that's a fantastic start. May not be where everyone wants to get, but I think it's a really good start. Were you done? Sorry,
No, don't be the most. I have issues with that, but I have a real issue with that graph on 6470. I don't think that's gonna fix the problem if you pay $50.
Councilman Dunn?
I understand what's being said, that it's gonna be, there's a non-tangible in the budget that it could go from here to way up there, but I don't think these numbers were just pulled out of the air. There's always been some thought put into this, and, we can't control how many fires we're gonna have. We can look to the past and say, this is how many fires we had in the last X years, so this is a pretty good estimate. These guys, most of them are young and they've got kids and they're giving up first steps and first communions and things going on in school for the kids to run and burn asses, and I say give them what they're worth. I don't care if it's points or dollars. School, community, fire department. You can say, we're making a paid thing. It already is a paid thing, points and dollars. It's already a paid thing. Call it honorarium. It's a wage. It's. That's not how we're paying them now. Let's pay them what they're worth. For the fire department, and I'm fine with all this.
Well, I said right from the beginning that I think it should be paid what they're worth. Everybody talks about the volunteering and talk about it, and you're all on council. I volunteer. Nobody's calling me at 2:00 in the morning to get out of bed and go and fight fire or haul someone out of the home. When you break it down, it's not even. We just did 189.5 divided by 39, and it's $2,858. I know as a whole, it seems like a lot, but that's no, it's to me. I have to.
48, 46, yeah.
Okay, I have to agree. It's chance when it comes down to what they're doing. Really, what they're doing, and they're doing it for the community. I get that, and I'm sure they have a sense of pride, and they have a sense of, I'm doing this because I want to help. But at the same time, they have lives, and they, the volunteers, I mean, what's the other option? If you lose all of the volunteer firefighters and you don't have any, is the township going to be able to have a paid firefighter? Would that not cost far more than what it's going to cost to pay volunteers?
I just have one more question to the chief, and sorry for the question, without, giving advance notice of this one. But United Counties Leads Government did a fire study last year, the year before that. Was any of this in that report? Was there any mention of paid hours point system or any of that? I have not read the report. I have no clue what the report says. I'm just curious. They spend a lot of money to develop a report to move forward together as United Counties. Was this one of the recommendations?
Through the chair, I don't remember that. Yeah. There's a lot of data. So if I can, patient costs. That kind of thing.
There were none in that. There were none in that report. Okay, that was my only. I wrote it down while we were talking, and and there was a lot spent on that report. And it seems to find a nice spot up on the shelf. But if it's a recommendation that's in the report, it's a recommendation. It's in the report.
I just
Yeah, absolutely.
the apps for the amount of was based on our protected training. And the reason to switch away from the point system was just the variability of the points. I mean, we could say we'll leave it a point system with that amount of money, but I mean, this year with lots of training, it will be reasonable. Next year, if we don't do as much training, we're going to be. I don't slight people, getting money, but it's that variability that people want to get away from. Having a system, what we call an hourly system, people know what to expect, and we can budget for. We can know how much we can deliver. We can set a budget annually for the amount we plan to spend. Put it up here and have the ratings changing for everybody every year. Does that make sense? We budget for what we're going to deliver in that year next to that. The plan is not to ask for 189,005 from this year forward. That was just to cover training for this year. Next year might be a little less. The year after should be less because we should have less training to meet that certification requirement.
You wanted in?
Just one more time here, and I guess it's not an answer I need right now, but this grid that shows that how many people come to various activated alarms and BC medical things like that. I guess what I'd like to see when it comes to council, it's not necessarily now, is something that tells us how we're gonna manage to have there must be a desired number of people you have for each of these types of incidents, and it might not be these numbers. I'd like to see if it is those numbers based on our our last several years of types of incidents we have for each of these. What does the actual cost look like? Because I just want to make sure that 189.5 part of the actual fighting of support. Pardon me. I just want to be able to validate that makes sense, and that we have controls in place to make sure we don't have, say, 24 people show up for a situation that needs 5, right? So I just want to see if we can put that together for that discussion.
So is there, I guess I'm going to sum it up. Is there a control in place then that that would control, for lack of a better word, how many people respond to each individual incident?
Through the chair, short answer, no. Minor incidents are only taking one station at a time, so only half of their volunteers are being asked to respond. But if there's 24 people at a station and there's a medical call, all 24 people could potentially, attend. It's a volunteer service.
Okay, I just like one before we close, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you could do us, do me a favor at least, and I'm sure everyone else would be happy. Is to put the, send us at the B, the point system, we're not D, but maybe make it E of what we're on now. Just for my own clarification. In other words, you have, I don't know whoever D is the point system is 61 for 25 firefighters. If you could send that out to me, the system that's on, that we're doing right now before we pass it. I should appreciate it, so I can kind of balance.
I think
If you could, please.
like, and, you know, from my perspective here as the chair of this committee, it seems like it's from what I heard, to the chief, it's, if I was to call a vote and everyone voted, it would be 5-2. Against the report as it is, so, I think if it comes forward to council and there isn't some changes or some reconsiderations to it, it's gonna fail, so, I don't know what you take from that. I'm not gonna give you direction. You've heard what the conversation is around the table. You know, I think that there's an ask to see a graph that represents what we do compared to what others do side by side. And I think that I've heard it, you know, an ask for some sort of a mechanism that controls, I've heard it on both sides of me actually, that controls, you know, what control is going to be in place just to not have 24 people respond when you only need 4. And without that, I don't think we're going to get the support that we're looking for. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, if you want to control the number of people that call, then hire them full time. We can't have volunteer everybody and say we're going to allow 6 people, so we're going to put them on cruise.
with all due respect, Chief, I'm giving you a couple of suggestions to change a report that's going to fail if you bring it forward. Listening to the discussion that happened around the table tonight, it's not trying to find a way to get it where you need it to be. And I think you've heard very clearly around here that nobody's interested in full-time firefighter. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap up that discussion. So, yes.
Look at the policy when we were trying.
Yep. Inquiries and notices of motion. Does anybody have an inquiry or notice of motion? None. There's no mayor's report, no question, or there is nobody online for question period. Do we have any submitted? No, I need a motion for adjournment then. Moved by Councilor Ward, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dillabaugh, non-debatable, all in favor? Or adjourned.
You can consent.